Now to the rest of the day's news. The Wikileaks founder and whistleblower Julian Assange has been arrested by British police in London after being holed up in the Ecuadorian embassy for the past 7 years. Officers removed Assange, visibly frail and with a long white beard, from the embassy after its government withdrew his asylum status. The arrest comes after weeks of tensions between Assange and the Ecuadorian government, which claimed he had violated the terms of his asylum. Mr. Assange is being held on behalf of the US authorities. He fears extradition to the US for publishing State Department and Pentagon documents. He's also wanted by British police for violating the terms of his bail in 2012. Well, our correspondent Andy Moore is outside the Ecuadorian embassy. Just give us an update on the very latest, Andy.
Well, the arrest happened just after 10 o'clock local time, about 3 hours ago, when Julian Assange was carried out of the embassy here in what police are calling a pre-planned operation. So they were invited in by the ambassador, and then we saw pictures of 7 or 8 plainclothes police officers man-hauling him, half carrying him down the steps. He was handcuffed. He was saying something, though it was inaudible. He may have been talking about persecution. He looked very different to the man who went into this embassy nearly 7 years ago. White hair, a bushy white beard. He was taken away in a police van, and police say he's being held at a central London police station and will appear in court as soon as possible. Now, he was initially arrested for failing to appear in court on these charges in Sweden. Those sex assault charges in Sweden have actually been dropped now. Their time expired. But we now know he was formally rearrested at 10:53 on those, in connection with those extradition proceedings to the United States. And they've been lying on file since December 2017. And this is a charge of acting in conspiracy with Chelsea Manning. Chelsea Manning was the American soldier who was accused of giving secrets, thousands of military secrets, to Wikileaks. Chelsea Manning is now in an American jail, accused of not cooperating with the American authorities because she wouldn't give evidence against Julian Assange. So a much more serious situation now for Julian Assange. What he feared all along, that he would be perhaps extradited to the US, is now a real possibility.
Andy, we were just looking at some of those images of Julian Assange being taken out of the Ecuadorian embassy, looking visibly quite frail, quite different to his 47 years and the man that walked into that embassy. But tensions have been brewing between the embassy and Assange for some time.
That's right. I mean, it was said a week ago that he would be thrown out within hours or days. Well, a little bit delayed, but that has happened. Yes, he's been accused by the Ecuadorians of breaching diplomatic protocol and also breaching the house rules for his stay here in the embassy. So the relationship has been going sour for some time. As for his physical appearance, as you say, very different from the man we saw go into the embassy 7 years ago. And in fact, his lawyers have said as a priority that Julian Assange should get medical treatment. And they say he's been denied that for the last 7 years because he couldn't leave the embassy for fear of arrest. So certainly Julian Assange's lawyers very concerned about his health. And they say that should take precedence, really, over any court appearance.
Andy, thanks so much for that update. Andy Moore there from outside the Ecuadorian embassy in London.
This is CNN Breaking News.
A good and very newsy Thursday morning to you. I'm Jim Sciutto.
And I'm Poppy Harlow. We're following major breaking news this morning. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is in a London courtroom right now. Just moments ago, the U.S. government charged him with conspiracy to commit computer intrusion, i.e. hacking. This is back in 2010, related to Chelsea Manning. The indictment alleges that Assange actually helped Manning facilitate, right? Manning, of course, a former intelligence analyst in the U.S. Army, crack a password on classified Defense Department documents.
It was quite a scene this morning to see Assange dragged out, against his will, clearly, of the Ecuadorian embassy, his home, his refuge, for the last 7 years, where he had refused to leave, afraid of exactly this, being arrested by UK authorities. Let's get to both CNN's Evan Perez. He's in Washington. Issa Suarez in London outside court. To you first, Isa, because Assange has been in court now, opportunity to plead. What did we hear from him?
Well, in fact, it's just wrapped up in the last minute or so, Jim and Poppy. He has been removed from court. We're expecting Wikileaks to come out and give a statement any moment now. But I can tell you that Assange will be remanded in custody, we've been told from our producer inside the courtroom, until there is an extradition hearing. That hearing, according to producer inside, will be on the 2nd of May. And this will appear via video link. Now, in terms of his other charge regarding skipping bail in 2012. He has been basically was told, according to the judge, saying that he is a narcissist who cannot get beyond his own selfish interests. This coming from the judge inside. So really what we know now is that Assange will have to wait for his extradition hearing. That's expected, according to the producer inside, this is May the 2nd, Jim. That's wrapped up now. Inside, he's been taken away. We're expecting to hear from Wikileaks. There's a protest behind me. As you can hear them, they're saying no extradition, freedom of the press, freedom of speech. And what we saw was Assange going in with a beard, a very grey, long beard, that we saw today as he was being dragged out of court, looking rather tired, rather old, but still, it seems, according to our producers, in good spirits. He waved to the cameras, and then he seemed calm and confident, but clearly very tired and surprised that this has happened. This has taken a turn of events, of course, because he was, like you said, for 7 years being protected by the Ecuadorian embassy. So in terms of the extradition hearing, that is expected now, according to the judge, on May the 2nd to take place, and then we'll find out exactly his fate. But the judge today calling him a narcissist in the last few minutes, in fact. The scenes here is getting louder. The crowds are coming out to support him. Of course, a man who to some is a hero, to others is a villain, but clearly something we also know, I should add, that we're expected to hear from Sajid Javid of the Home Office. He said today that no one is above the law. We also got some colour, in fact, today from what happened this morning. They went in, the Scotland Yard went in, they spoke to the ambassador, they removed his possibility of staying there, of staying in the embassy. They asked him to leave the embassy, he refused, and then that's when they had to put cuffs on him and drag him out. And it was at the police station where he was charged, where he was told of the charges against him. So really, we're seeing Assange coming in to face really some of the charges, the 2 charges he faces, skipping bail in 2012, and now expect the hearing, Poppy and Jim, on May the 2nd.
Okay, thank you very much. Evan Perez is also with us. An important note, Evan, Assange has not been charged with, at least for now, anything related to WikiLeaks' role in releasing those DNC hacked emails all around the 2016 election. But Evan, just weigh in here on this as we wait to hear from his attorneys and also the UK Home Secretary.
Well, that's right, Poppy. He has not been charged with anything beyond this conspiracy hacking charge from 2010 related to Chelsea Manning. But I'm told by a U.S. official that we can expect that there will be additional charges brought by the Justice Department. When exactly, we don't know. But you can expect that certainly if he is extradited, he is going to face additional charges, perhaps including related to the 2016 Russian interference, the hacking charges related to the Russians in 2016. And we also know that one of the things that the Justice Department has been looking at was what they believe was there was a difference between what WikiLeaks was doing, what they thought WikiLeaks was doing, which was publishing classified information that was taken by other people. They believed that Assange had transformed himself essentially to be part of the hacking. And that's what you see in this document today. As part of the indictment, they say that he essentially helped Chelsea Manning crack the passwords. They had an agreement, and this was information that they later were able to recover. Now, this has been a case that's been long in the making, as you know. Back in the Obama administration, they looked at whether they could bring charges against Julian Assange. and they struggled with it. They thought that perhaps they could not because WikiLeaks was claiming to be a publisher. Some of that changed, Poppy, as a result of evidence that they were able to recover. You can see a little bit of that in the indictment. They talk about how there was communications that they were able to recover that they said showed that there was a conspiracy, there was an agreement to try to help Chelsea Manning get into secure computers belonging to the Defense Department, and that's where everything has changed. Under the Trump administration, the Attorney General Jeff Sessions made the determination that these charges could be brought, and according to the documents that we saw today, this indictment was actually sealed and signed last year in 2018.
So the same information was known under the Obama and the Trump administration, but they saw it wildly differently in terms of what is freedom of the press and what is breaking the law.
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
They did.
All right, Evan, thanks. Great reporting.
Important distinction. Issa, thanks as well. Outside the courtroom, let's speak now to former New York City prosecutor and CNN legal analyst Paul Callan, former federal prosecutor for the Southern District of New York, Jessica Roth. We also have CNN senior international correspondent Nick Payton-Walsh. Jessica, if I could begin with you. So to this point, the extradition request confined to 2010 Chelsea Manning case. But you will also have in the U.S., assuming this goes through, a star witness and one of the accused for Russia's interference in the U.S. election, just based on how U.S. intelligence views WikiLeaks' role. Is there any chance that he is not questioned on that as well?
Are you alluding to Roger Stone?
Well, well, Roger Stone as well, but I'm talking about Julian Assange.
Oh, Julian Assange. Oh, good point. So once he's here, right, sort of things start all over again, if you will, I think, in terms of his relationship perhaps with U.S. prosecutors. Once he is here and the reality sets in that he's going to be facing the charges for which extradition is sought and perhaps additional charges related to the 2016 election, he may change his mind in terms of whether he's willing,
voluntarily,
in terms of whether he's willing to cooperate with prosecutors. He's certainly indicated so far that he is not inclined to be a cooperative witness with U.S. prosecutors, that would be against his credo, if you will. But sometimes people do change their minds when they're facing a very real threat of prosecution.
Paul Callan, to you, I think it's interesting to note some recent reporting from our colleague Nina Dos Santos that according to Assange's lawyer, he was not approached by the Mueller team, which I think is interesting given the 2016, Russian interference, etc. May 2nd, extradition hearing there in the UK. What's the likelihood he's extradited to the U.S.?
Well, in looking at the indictment that he's being extradited on, I think it's a very thin, a wafer-thin indictment in terms of the evidence, at least that's listed in the indictment. The standard under British law is that there has to be reasonable cause to believe that Assange has committed a crime. So the question will be, under this indictment, which says basically two things. One, that Chelsea Manning shared part of a password with Julian Assange as part of their conspiracy to hack into U.S. computer networks, and two, set up a cloud file that Manning could use to transfer information to. Now, does that make out a conspiracy to hack U.S. computers is the question that British courts will be looking at. Or will the First Amendment defense come into play? And Assange says, listen, I was functioning as a journalist, and I have the right to accept information from any source.
Yeah, but journalists don't help hack. That's right.
Well, the question is, was he helping to hack? There's no claim in the indictment that Assange used this so-called partial password to hack into the U.S. computer system, or that he even gave information to Manning that would make Manning a more effective hacker.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a very, as I say, it's a wafer-thin indictment in terms of making out a case against
at least on
Assange.
what they made public. It seems Nick Payton-Walsh there in London, and the pictures we're showing you there are a live camera position where we expect both the spokesman, and the lawyer for Julian Assange to speak very soon. Nick Payton-Walsh, this is the end of a 7-year stand by Julian Assange in the Ecuadorian embassy. Yeah. He never left it to avoid not only the possibility of extradition to the U.S., but also charges in the UK, which he's just been found guilty of, and also hanging over his head charges of sexual assault in Sweden.
Absolutely. It's been almost a fabled presence, frankly, for Assange in the Ecuadorian embassy. And we saw in the last week or so how that increasingly strained relationship with Ecuador, which as recently as December 2017 actually granted him Ecuadorian citizenship and had before that provided asylum for him in that embassy, it clearly began to fray. Some say perhaps Assange and his legal team got wind maybe of these extradition proceedings. There certainly was an inadvertent unsealing of some of the charges against Assange. It appeared in a court document recently. That may have fed into the recent climate in the last week or so, in which we in fact saw Assange and his colleagues at Wikileaks make very clear allegations against those same Ecuadorian diplomats that in fact they had been spying upon him, that there was a video and audio recording system around there to check his every single move. Clearly, I think that was about trying to suggest the relationship had broken down beyond some state of repair. Now, the events that occurred this morning, we're hearing from the courtroom, you heard partially from Issa, are clearly sequenced. The ambassador to Ecuador in the United Kingdom, London, told him that his asylum had been revoked. The police turned up. They appear to have tried to get him to come quietly. He, according to statements read to the court, barged past them into a different part of the embassy, and then he was taken out. And I think you can see in his appearance there, very dishevelled, not the well-kept man we've seen, quite capable of getting hold of a razor blade and hygiene materials inside the embassy in the past. Very dishevelled, dragged out towards the truck, perhaps hoping to conspire the idea of a man very much conspired against. I should go back to something one of your colleagues was saying there actually just earlier on, to do with the nature of the charges here, whether or not this is a man who could be perceived as a journalist. It is quite clear that the US indictment suggests this is somebody who is involved in obtaining the information as their criminal offence, not necessarily its distribution. It talks about how he helped Chelsea Manning crack a password. Now, as I know as a journalist myself, if you're presented with a safe that's locked and you try and get into it, then you probably know you're stepping on the wrong side of the ethical boundary here. So I'm sure a lot of that will be considered by the UK court system here. They're only allowed to look at offences that potentially mandate a year in jail here in the United Kingdom, and are also offences here in the United Kingdom. So that will be what begins to occur in May. But this very politicised fate of Julian Assange, as it's been in the United Kingdom, relating to the often contentious US-UK extradition relationship, that will certainly play out very publicly in the weeks ahead.
Listen, Nick, Paul, Jessica as well, stay with us. Got a lot of news, and as you see there, we're going to hear some live comments from Assange's lawyer and spokesman very shortly. We'll be right back.